band of soldiers stood in formation, bloodied and wet from the downpour of rain. They're surrounded by corpses of their comrades and enemies at every angle. The swordsman is getting frustrated, and these goons keep grinding them down bit by bit, non-stop. It's a group of cold-blooded killers sporting dark attires and masks, and they are relentless. Not giving the swordsman any time to breathe and regroup, they launched another coordinated attack. Their powerful momentum and brilliant blade skills quickly toppled the soldiers' formation. Once the vanguard was dealt with, the killers immediately shifted focus to the swordsman, the leader of the band. He did not let the sight of his fallen brothers distract him from the blade of the enemy. The swordsman picked the optimal path to neutralize multiple enemies at once and took it. With every slash he made, blood was spilled on the ground quite violently too. At this rate, there would be no end to this fight. He'll have to make his last stand regardless of his chances. All he could say is that these people are cold-blooded bastards. He was supposed to do some business with the most prominent military and economic figures in the region, but it has led to this. They made a deal, and he would wind up getting stabbed in the back, literally and figuratively. Alas, the swordsman will do his best to protect his master in the carriage, even if that comes at the cost of his life. He rallied his remaining men to hold on with everything they had, as help would be on its way. The killers were just waiting for that to bring out one of the surprises they prepared. Here's a clue. It involves the supposed reinforcement unit. Those men who were supposed to aid them in battle have already been slain. Their heads are harvested to show the main forces the reality of their situation. The cavalry was viciously annihilated by an absolute unit of a man. The swordsman started to question just what was going on in the world. Seeing a familiar banner closing in made everything a little clearer, and much scarier. The Muram Alliance leader, first heaven-piercing sword Dam Chunhak, has entered the field. He gave the miserable grounds a single glance and admitted that the power of the ice pavilion is indeed formidable to hold on for so long. The big boss did not expect that they would manage to put up a decent fight against the Muram Alliance. The swordsman smiled and clapped back at the crooked leader who only had the balls to act cocky because the master of Ice Pavilion was not present. Hearing that insult, the masked killers were enraged. They cannot tolerate any disrespect to their lord. With their undying loyalty, speaking out against their lord is a grave sin punishable by a bloody death. Before things could escalate even further, the person in the carriage stepped out. It was a beautiful woman with horror and worry in her eyes. She asked everyone to wait for just a moment. The swordsman called her Miss Huayan. She assured him that she would be fine. Surprisingly, the Crooked Lord also ordered his death squad to back off, and they dutifully complied. In the middle of the blood-soaked ground of the battlefield, a lady and the imposing old man confronted each other. Miss Huayan wanted to have a discussion with the Lord, but he started venting about how she was deceived by monkeys to run away from home, a disgrace to Dam Chunhak's name. However, he believes that everyone makes mistakes and can be forgiven. He's her father after all. So, he would like to extend a chance to return to where she belongs. She asked if the remaining men of the Ice Pavilion would be let go if she went back. Just one look at her father's ruthless eyes made it obvious that the answer was no. If that's the case, Miss Huayan could only apologize for disappointing her overbearing father again. The Muram Alliance leader took a second to process his daughter's answer. Then, he swiftly pulled his sword out. Its blade reflects the glimmer of moonlight. Mr. Swordsman must have known what was about to happen and desperately tried to prevent it. But the first heaven-piercing sword had already raised his blade. Without batting an eye, the stubborn old man cleaved his daughter down for not bending to his will. Mr. Swordsman tried to enact revenge, but it was too late. As Miss Huayan's body hit the damp ground, her father proclaimed that he no longer had a daughter. He lost her under the influence of orcs, a mindless faction. With this issue settled, he will now make it his sole mission to recover the soul of the Central Plains. As for the remaining soldiers, it's up to his stone-cold killers to clean up the mess. They moved fast as if they were just itching to wet their blades with Ice Pavilion blood, but the swordsman stood tall and quickly slaughtered the first wave with his own impressive technique. He yelled at his men, or at least what was left of them, to fight to the last man. Miss Huayan has died, and all they have going for them is revenge. Just looking at the miserable state of the once vibrant lady made them want to fight the killers with all they had. With the last bit of consciousness she still has, Miss Huayan's only wish is to go back. She promised a certain someone that she would come back, but that might be impossible now. Maybe next time, she'll get the chance to do so. In the Ice Pavilion, the head of the pavilion was just receiving reports of what happened to Huayan's caravan. Northern Sea Palace Master Seol Mudok sat on his throne, having trouble digesting the accounts that he had just received. The members of the Ice Pavilion, including Lord Bai Muyue, who went as an envoy to conclude negotiations with the Martial Alliance, faced the Muram Alliance in an ambush and were thusly annihilated. Hearing this report reiterated finally broke Mudok's restraint. A blizzard originating from the throne lit up the room. The messenger and his trusted aides remained silent as their master's emotions crystallized into anger. Saol Mudok slowly stood up from his throne with a lust for vengeance. He proclaimed that he would wage war on the Miram Alliance and wipe out every last member of the Miram Alliance. Mudok will wipe them off the map if it's the last thing he does. With the entire combat force of the Northern Sea Palace behind him, the Central Plains are about to witness a show of force never seen before. Years later, on a winter night, the war waged by the Northern Sea Palace reached its climax. With their unstoppable momentum, it did not take long to push the powerful alliance leader on the ropes. He looked around the red snow and the corpses of his men and wondered just how they got annihilated so helplessly. On top of his multiple lethal wounds, Lord Dam Chunhak's inner power is completely depleted. With no signs of hope, he requested a quick death at the hands of the Northern Sea Palace master. Saol Mudok looked down at the supposed powerhouse with utmost resentment. Before ending it all, he wanted to ask why a father would do what he did to his daughter. Why would a man end the life of his child? Much to everyone's surprise, Dam Chunhak actually snickered in response and refused to answer the question. In his perspective, the daughter of the leader, who plays love games with a barbarian like Saol Mudok, is deplorable. It would be a greater mistake to let her live and continue tarnishing his reputation. Mudok did not waste any more words for this bastard. He just raised his hand and beckoned the power of ice. With his death in sight, Dam Chunhak taunted Mudok one last time. The palace master may have taken over Jiangnan, but he would never have gotten what he wanted most. That earned him a hole pierced by ice right in the middle of his chest. After everything he had worked for to reach the top, his arrogance ultimately ended him. Before he breathed his last breath, his entire life flashed before his eyes. Days when she would carry his little daughter on his shoulders. Days when he was so focused on becoming a leader that he forgot how to be a father. The times when he overbearingly dictated how Waian should live. That night, when she finally had enough, she snuck away from her comfortable life. The last thing that the bastard remembered was cleaving his daughter to death. The monster actually thinks he has the right to feel infuriated and resentful. This night marks an essential pivotal point in history. With the death of the Miram Alliance leader Dam Chunhak, the 6-year-long Great Battle came to an end. The living legend of the Northern Sea, the Northern Sea Palace Master, Saol Mudok, came out with the victory. That night was also the moment he occupied the highest seat in the region, becoming the uncontested ruler of the Central Plains. However, Saol Mudok showed no emotions of joy or celebration. He simply gazed at the moon calmly, letting the snow fall around him. With the war over, an era of peace started. In the Lord's quarters, a lone dying flower in a flower pot sat on his desk. After everything was said and done, all that was left for Mudok was this dying flower. He still can remember Huayan fervently calling him to check something out. She stormed into his room with the fully bloomed flower. Apparently, it's the Lotus of Love. The Lotus of Love is a flower that only blooms when it senses true love between couples. Huayan cannot help but tear up. She never doubted his feelings for her, but she was starting to worry that the lotus wouldn't bloom, but it had bloomed beautifully. It's proof that her love was not one-sided, and Mudok truly loves her. He wrapped her in his warm embrace and proved that he only had eyes for her. He has since been grateful for this flower for making Huayan so happy. As a show of his undying love for the lady, Mudok intends to fill an entire garden with Lotus of Love flowers. It will be a tribute to the love of his life. No matter how hard he tried, he just can't forget her. The guy waged war against the whole Miram Alliance for her, after all. Much to Mudok's surprise, the dying Lotus of Love started glimmering and blooming once again. This shouldn't be possible, right? So he called his trusted shadow, Muyong, and the loyal servant immediately appeared. Mudok needs someone who can explain what just happened before his eyes. He needs experts, even if the entire Central Plains must be searched. Muyong took the master's orders and quickly worked on it. A few days later, preparations were done, and a group of people were brought to the palace. The Manbakja, who are said to know everything in the world, have been gathered at the Northern Sea Ice Palace. They still have no clue as to why the new superpower of the region called for them. Their confusion won't continue for too long as a commanding voice from the sky ordered them to come forth. A door opened, letting in a blinding light. They don't know what they're walking into, but it's not like they have any other choice. Once everyone laid eyes upon what was outside of the room, the Manbakja were stunned. In front of them was a lush garden full of Lotus of Love. Even the most experienced scholars of Manbakja have never seen a garden filled with these legendary flowers in their entire lives. Most people might not even see one in their life. The character for love is inscribed on the stems of the flower as if it's embroidered by the gods. It is undoubtedly the Lotus of Love. How could someone even cultivate so many of such a rare flower? Mudok asked the Manbakja if they liked the flowers. The scholars were so enthused that they almost forgot to ask who this man was. Saol Mudok introduced himself as just the owner of this garden. But for the common folk, Seol Mudok is the absolute ruler of the Central Plains, the most powerful man in the realm. He explained that his and Huiyun's love made these flowers bloom with their love, but when she died, the first flower followed. However, for some unknown reason, that one flower was revived and bloomed once again. The Manbakja might be the most knowledgeable scholars in the Central Plains, but this might be above their pay grade. Thankfully, no matter how obscure this phenomenon was, the oldest Manbakja can think of one possible reason for this. Mudok's hopes were raised as he intensely asked the old man what that possibility could be. He thinks that this phenomenon could be attributed to a person being reborn in a new body. In other words, reincarnation. It's possible that the palace master's deceased lover has been reincarnated somewhere in the world. Mudok's curiosity and obsession were piqued. The old man insisted that if his theory doesn't stand, then there's no other explanation for the second bloom. Finally, the palace master has regained some semblance of hope. He succeeded in entering the Central Plains and unifying the entire region, fulfilling the long-cherished wish of the Northern Sea. But all that it left him was emptiness. Now is the time to remedy that. As the Northern Sea prospers, his longing for Huiyun only grows. The day he lost her, he just couldn't find a purpose to continue living aside from the burning hatred against the Muram alliance. So, Mudok wants details and plans at once. Well, it is said that the lotus of love glows when two lovers are in the same place. This concept will be their basis. He knows this to be true. That night, when Huiyun showed him the lotus, it glowed for the first time. But carrying a live flower might be difficult, so the old man suggested crafting the lotus of love into a piece of jewelry to easily carry. Mudok entrusted everything to the old man and the Manbakja. Departure will be scheduled in 10 days, so all the preparations should be done by then. If everything goes well, he promised to reward each of the Manbakja with 100 niang of gold. I don't know how much that is, but it sounds like generational wealth to me. The palace master walked out of the garden. The scholars were excited to work on the game plan. This one meeting lifted Mudok's spirits out of the dump. He really thought that he'd never get to see the love of his life ever again. But now he has hope once more. He has a purpose. This time he swore to never let go of this hope. No matter where Huiyun might be, even if it's in the deepest depths of hell, he will follow. He could only hope that Huiyun could wait for him. It's been a while since the search began. The team, led by the palace master, continues to set sail in search of the possibly reincarnated Huiyun. Inside the ship, Mudok has been stressing over the routes they need to scour. They had nearly covered the entire Central Plain, and the only place left to look at it was Hainan. It has been 3 years and 5 months since he started the search for the love of his life, yet he hasn't found her anywhere in the Central Plains. During this time, he never neglected his cultivation. Mudok has advanced from the transformation realm to the profound realm. He experienced complete metamorphosis twice, and yet the search continues to bear no fruit. His only hope is the region of Hainan. With the lotus of love jewelry around his neck, Mudok can't afford to give up now. He remembered the last time they shared a meal. He was vehemently against her going to the meeting in person, but Huiyun insisted that her father had decided to personally attend the negotiations. If she's there, maybe the Muram leader will understand Mudok's vision, or it could be a trap. Still, Huiyun wanted to put her trust in her father just this once. Upon careful consideration, Mudok sighed and gave in. He just can't resist Huiyun's whims. He would agree with the condition that if anything seems off, she must not hesitate to get out of there and come back to him immediately. Before departing, she even left him something very important. It was a golden ring fashioned into a necklace. It's a keepsake from Huiyun's late mother. It is said that this necklace has the power to return to the person who gave it. She believes that this necklace will always lead them back to each other's arms. The last thing Mudok heard her say in her sweet voice was not to worry about her, as she would never leave his side. In hindsight, he regrets letting her go like that. He knew that he should have stopped her at all costs back then. But thinking about what-ifs is futile now. Especially when the ship crew is clamoring about a storm coming at the deck. The poor shipmen held on for their dear lives as strong winds and heavy rain tested their boat. Mudok came upstairs to see what the chaos was all about. A sudden storm is not on their itinerary at all. Upon seeing the full view of the storm, even the strongest man in the realm was taken aback. Looking to the side, a tidal wave as high as 3 times their ship was moving closer at an alarming speed. Mudok stood in business and activated his protective ki coupled with a 1,000-pound hammer technique. He braced himself for impact as the wave swallowed the ship whole. Most of the crew were knocked out of the ship, left to fend for themselves in the choppy seawater in the middle of a catastrophic storm. No one was safe. Everyone on the deck was vulnerable to getting swept. At this rate, this could be everyone's final voyage. Mudok can't let that happen on his watch, so he activated his telekinetic grasp. He conjured multiple beams of intangible lights that swiftly headed for the water. The telekinetic lights dove into the surface to look for any survivors who had been knocked out of the ship. This should be a good start. Mudok was confident that he could rescue everyone in time. But that might not be the case as another tidal wave is upon them. This time, it looks a lot bigger than the last one. The remaining crew were frozen in fear of what was about to come. They can't survive something like that wave at all. Mudok reached out for his blade. He knew that the ship couldn't take much more of this cursed storm, so there might be only one viable option left. He wanted to use his blade and ice manipulation in conjunction with each other to confront the force of nature directly. The remaining crew felt the temperature drastically drop around the area. That's only natural as the Palace Master intends to freeze the waves with his freezing ice wind technique. While he was priming his blade to deliver the attack, the Lotus of Love necklace started glowing like never before. It shone so bright that the glimmer pierced through the incoming ungodly wave. Mudok's attack has been cancelled as he was blinded by the bright lights. Losing control of his body, he was yanked out of the ship and into whatever was giving off that light in the distance. After that, the storm subsided, and the ship was left in one piece. The crew could not believe their eyes. The light was nothing they had ever seen before. The dark skies cleared up, and they found themselves in a tropical paradise with land nearby. As for the Palace Master himself, it looks like he also survived the bizarre storm, but he opened his eyes and felt and looked like hell. He scanned his surroundings and found luggage and boxes of supplies around him. He's now cramped inside some sort of carriage. How did he even get here? He remembers fighting a storm in the middle of the sea. Then suddenly, he's here. Mudok hadn't even had the chance to adjust and figure out where he was when he heard a shrill scream coming from outside. Near the carriage, a few people carrying supplies were being hunted down by gigantic houseflies on a grassy plain. A lady and a little girl were hiding behind some foliage as they watched some of the houseflies get cut down. Some scholarly dude and a young man are trying their best to repel the flies with nothing but a meat cleaver in hand. They were about to get sneak attacked by one of the flies, if not for a mysterious force bursting the oversized bug to pieces and cutting its body in half. The mysterious force came out of the first-class carriage in their caravan. Once the dust settled, Sail Mudok's finger was left sticking up into the air. He reckons that he must have washed up in a forest somewhere in the Central Plains. But there is something very odd about this place's vibes. As far as he could tell, these people look like foreigners. This might mean that he washed up quite far from the mainland of the Central Plains. Then there are the bug monsters flying in the air, unrestricted and utterly revolting to look at. Flies are inherently repugnant. Mudok could easily kill the Muram Alliance leader and become the most powerful man in the realm, but even he was not immune to disgust. His entrance might have been a little over the top as he shattered the first-class carriage he was riding on, but there were more pressing matters at hand. There are foreigners and oversized flies all around him. Just what in the world is happening to his Central Plains? A fly tried to catch him lacking by speeding up like a giant bullet, but Mudok's reflexes were too fast for that trick. To retaliate, he did not even turn his head around and just cast the divine white ice palm to encase the pesky fly in a shard of ice. His technique is actually quite brutal as the frozen crystal crumbled upon itself, crushing the fly's body into little pieces of ice shards. Mudok hates the fact that a mere beast dared to attack humans just because it has grown a little bigger than usual. To him, this is an unforgivable sin. These flies should know their place. So Seol Mudok went sped up and went sicko mode on these insects. His speed is unparalleled and his blade is peerless. His technique continuously freeze-dried multiple beasts at once. Once he was done swinging his blade, an ice sculpture of flies appeared in the air. Then came the finale of his divine white ice palm, a beautiful explosion of ice and snow that looked like fireworks. This should be more than enough effort for some pathetic bugs. The foreigners were beyond shocked to see what this strange man was capable of. Never in a million years could they have expected that a human could do something like it. With the bugs taken care of, Seol Mudok turned towards the foreigners. An old man came up to him, seemingly introducing himself politely, but the language barrier made it impossible to understand what he was saying. The old man bowed, seemingly thanking Mudok for getting rid of the beasts that attacked the caravan. Mudok couldn't understand the language the old man was speaking, but he felt gratitude. He apologized, as he couldn't understand what the foreigner was saying. He tried to ask if there is anyone who can speak the language of the Central Plains, but it's pretty clear that no one does. To remedy this, the old man requested something from the lanky scholarly dude. Mudok continued trying to communicate with them to no avail. The old man wanted to say something, but he couldn't even begin to gesture it. Well, the most straightforward way is to just hand Mudok the ring in his palm. Just as the palace master was wondering what this ring was for, the old man started emanating a colorful glow. He held the ring in between his fingers and cast a language interpretation spell on the accessory. To finish off the spell's cast, the old man hit one of those cute magical girls poses. It is traumatizing, to say the least. Even Mudok would agree with me on this one. Now he thinks the old man is just a weirdo. The magical old man cleared his throat, and suddenly he spoke a language that Mudok could fully understand. It was fascinating. From what he saw, the old man could now speak the Central Plains language fluently because of that ring. Now that they can communicate, the old man reintroduced himself properly as Edmund Roll, the leader of the Roll Merchant Association. He wanted to extend his gratitude to Mudok for saving their humble merchant association. He also wanted to ask what the name of their savior was. This powerful, magic swordsman. Well, Mudok does not know what a magic swordsman is, but he gave them his name, Seol Mudok. Edmund could not believe what he had just heard. Did this guy just say that he didn't know what a magic swordsman was? A magic swordsman is someone who uses both a sword and magic, just like Mudok. It's self-explanatory, bro. The problem is that Mudok does not even have a clue what magic is. Now Edmund is really bugging out. This white-haired stranger just shot ice right in front of everyone, and now he claims that he doesn't know what magic is. Just where on earth did this Mudok come from? Well, the palace master hates having his questions unanswered. As Seol Mudok was about to snap from confusion and impatience, Edmund was having a hard time finding the words to explain these basic concepts. He would have stood there thinking forever if Mudok had not come up to him with ice magic in his hands, demanding answers. At least Edmund confirmed that what they have in their midst is a certified nutcase. The balding old man locked in. Since this Mudok guy doesn't know, he'll just explain in simple terms before he goes ballistic and goes on a crazy rampage. In the end, Edmund is forced to explain just what this foreign concept of magic is in the world. The two talked until the sun went down. Only then did Mudok feel satisfied with the new things he learned. The palace master never would have thought that there was something called magic in this part of the Central Plains. The world is indeed vast. Edmund kept hearing the guy yapping about the Central Plains, but he didn't even know where or what that place was. When he asked, Mudok got mildly offended. Why would this old man ask where the Central Plain is when they're currently standing on it? Mudok asked the old man if he had forgotten where they were right now. He's just asking because it's absurd to not know of the Central Plains while being in the Central Plains itself. Edmund just chucked this up to crazy talk, but he remained respectful of the powerful magic swordsman. He carefully explained that they are currently camped in a forest leading to the capital of Drake Kingdom, Barhan. Well, the stubborn lord is set on his ways. He asserted that he's never heard anyone refer to the Central Plains as Drake or whatever. He even accused Edmund of going senile. Still, Edmund kept his cool and insisted that he was only 50 years old, still years away from deteriorating mental capacity. Instead, he's worried about Mudok as he keeps on insisting that they're in the Central Plains after being saved. If they cannot come to a definitive conclusion, then they could just ask the kid who has been peeking at them from behind the tree nearby. Edmund was shocked that Leo was eavesdropping on their conversation. Mudok questioned the young man if they were currently in the Central Plains or Drake. When Leo did not respond immediately, Mudok shot the kid with a sharp glance. Edmund had to explain that Leo wouldn't be able to understand his words, but he'll just give Mudok the translation ring. All he has to do is put it on his finger and shout the magic phrase, "Interpret language." Even though it's a waste to lend such an expensive artifact to a crazy guy, Edmund can't accept being treated like a senile old man when he knows he's right. Mudok did what Edmund instructed, and the ring soon glimmered with a bright light. Endless runes etched in all kinds of languages quickly coalesced into the accessory, much to the palace master's surprise. Once the lights died down, the ring's effect showed itself. He can now hear and understand the foreign words perfectly. This is some revolutionary sorcery. Now that he could speak with the foreigners, he asked the kid what his name was, and Leo timidly introduced himself. The next question is whether the land they're standing on is the Central Plains, or this Drake Kingdom Edmund was yapping about. Leo answered the question with another question. Just what exactly are the Central Plains? As for the proper answer, Leo corroborated that they were in a forest located on the path leading to Barhan, the capital of Drake Kingdom. Mudok did not accept that answer at all and accused the kid of also going senile. He even thought that Edmund was conspiring with the child to gaslight him. But the old man insisted that even if Mudok asked all the members of the Merchant Association, he'd get the same answer. From Edmund's impassioned reaction, it does not seem like he is lying. That means this really is not the Central Plains like he thought it was. Now that he's thinking about it, the circumstances that led him to this place were freaky. As established earlier, he remembers fighting a storm on the ship before something happened. When he opened his eyes, he was already inside a cramped carriage. Isn't the logical explanation for all this crap simple? Could he have been teleported to somewhere else? Realizing that he must have moved through space, somehow confused and shocked Northern Sea Palace Master Seol Mudok heavily. Coming to terms with the fact that he's currently standing on the Drake Kingdom soil instead of the Central Plains is easier said than done. To make matters worse and more dangerous, he suddenly felt a pang of pain inside his chest. It was brief, but it was a type of pain that he had never encountered before. Mudok tried his best to hide this strange feeling he felt in his dantian just now, while Edmund, the businessman, came over to ask if he was starting to believe now. He reckons that this energy, which is different from anything he has ever experienced, might have caused the sharp internal pain. Well, whatever it is that is lingering in the atmosphere and agitating his core, one thing's for sure, is that something is not right in this place. Mudok stood up and took off without saying another word to the caravan. They tried to ask him what was up, but he did not reply and just walked off with a grim expression. He needs to check something for himself. He scoured the woods while trying to attune to the energy in nature, and this confirmed that everything felt different from what he was used to. Mudok can sense pure energy swirling around the air, and it confirms that this place is definitely different from the Central Plains. Maybe the woods are a little too restrictive, so the palace master decided to use a boulder as his launch pad into the air. Using his superhuman bounce, he took to the skies. He stayed up there for a bit while filtering everything he was sensing and comparing the atmosphere to the one he was accustomed to. Mudok then tried to compress pure energy in his hands. The seemingly simple process that he could do in his sleep in the Central Plains is a laborious job in this place. Still, he did not become the strongest man on the continent by giving up. Even when put in an unfamiliar position, Mudok's supreme talent enabled him to manifest a complete technique. He had to scream, shout, and pour his all to do so, though. With the strenuous task of compressing pure energy into his hands to be absorbed into his body, just one session basically doubled the amount of chi accumulated in his dantian. That's some good news, at the very least. However, the problem and mystery of how he ended up in this foreign place still stand. Mudok's heart and mind are still focused on his goal to find Huayan as soon as possible. While he was aimlessly flying through the air, he noticed the jewelry daggling on his neck. Could it be that this teleportation mumbo-jumbo was caused by the light emitted by the necklace back in the thunderstorm? Huayan said that this special accessory has the power to return to the person who gave it after all. Maybe this was his chance. If he was sent here to these foreign lands, it must be for a reason. It must be to look for the love of his life. In the event that this idea pans out, then Huayan must be in this place. Back in the business caravan camp, Old Man Edmund is running out of patience for that strange magic swordsman that just up and left. They can't really do much. That guy was utterly unpredictable, but also insanely strong. The most deviously dangerous combination there is. Sail Mudok cleared his throat and reappeared in front of everybody. He was pleased to see that every one of the crew was here, as he was going to need a lot of information. He politely apologized for leaving so suddenly, stating that he had some business that needed attending to. Also, he has a few questions. Edmund awkwardly smiled and entertained the magic swordsman's question, but inside, he's feeling creeped out by Mudok's smile. First, the palace master wanted just one more confirmation if what that boy, Leo, said was the truth. If they really are currently inside something called the Drake Kingdom. Edmund answered affirmatively. At the moment, the caravan is aiming to go a bit further in the trail to reach the capital city of this kingdom, the city of Barhan. Now, the magic swordsman wanted to know more about Barhan. A kid laughed and butted into the conversation, commenting that Mudok seemed to be absolutely clueless about their current location, almost as if he's one of those people who spend all their time training in the mountains. The kid has heard stories about eccentric people, oddball geniuses like this magic swordsman, but this is his first time seeing one in the flesh. Mudok just rode the wave and let them think that he's an expert training in the mountains and has only come out today to experience the world. This was certainly a convenient excuse as to why he did not know anything about what was happening or where he was. Barhan, Drake. He had never heard of these places before. Perhaps he can extract some more information from the cheeky kid. Seeing that some of them had different colored eyes, Mudok assumed that this must be a land of the Western barbarians he had only heard about. Fortunately, the kid seemed enthusiastic at the thought of teaching an expert magic swordsman about the world. It seems like he even had something special prepared to maximize this lecture. Mudok followed the kid and asked what his name was. This cheeky little one was named Luffy. Lil Bro might just be the king of the pirates. Edmund watched as Luffy led Mudok to the campfire to share some info and stories with a grimace on his face. He doesn't like the magic swordsman's friendly act. He's not a fan of unpredictable people. That night, Luffy brought out a detailed continental map, and Mudok started learning about this place and the language the people used. As unbelievable as it was, as the lecture continued, he realized that this place was not a foreign land at all, but an entirely different world instead. The lay of the land is oddly shaped, to say the least, and the writing differs from any of the systems and dialects from the Central Plains. Furthermore, in this world, not only are there other species like the graceful elves and hardworking dwarves, but there are also similar races with their own sets of customs and culture, like the beastmen. Mudok learned that of all the diverse species in this realm, there is one that is considered to be the undisputed strongest creature, known as a dragon. Luffy described them as lizards with wings or something along those lines. Then there is something called warp magic and magic circles. These ones might be related to the reason why he was transported to a different realm in the first place. According to the kid, warp magic can only be used by 5th circle mages and above. They draw a round magic circle on the ground and chant their spells. Then, one can instantaneously travel to wherever one wishes. The better the mage's ability is, the further one can warp. The inexplicable sorceries in this place might be the toughest pill for the palace master to swallow. If there are untapped powers in this world that he has never encountered before, then what other amazing things could this new world hold? In a contemplative state of mind, Mudok looked up to the skies and noticed something he had not seen before. Up in the starry night sky were not 1, not 2, but 3 whole moons lighting up the evening among the clouds. Now, Mudok is a full-on believer who somehow warped into a different world. This realm was just way too different from any place in the Central Plains. Maybe he was right in thinking that Huayan has something to do with these events. Perhaps she really did summon him into this world. While our boy was lost in thought, the people of the caravan were in chaos. The scholarly man was yelling at someone named Savina to stop what she was trying to do. Mudok turned his gaze towards the commotion, maintaining a high sense of vigilance. He can't see what's happening, but from the emotionally charged noise alone, he could tell that something serious was happening at the campfire. The blonde young lady looks like she's enraged by something. She was yelling at everyone while thick and unnatural discolored veins popped up along her neck. Blondie was holding a little girl hostage with a knife in her right hand. She warned everyone to maintain their distance and get any closer, and she swore that she would kill everyone in sight. The scholarly man tried to plead with Savina to calm down and promised that when they reached the capital, they would be able to heal her sickness as there were many capable magicians in the capital. Edmund would even call in a few favors too. Savine just needs to let go of the scared little girl, Annie. Savina doesn't buy a word that the scholarly Charles is saying. She's not a fool. Even if they reach the capital on time, healers are rare. If they manage to find one, the astronomical cost of their services would be impossible to afford. There is an assassin bug's egg lodged deep in her heart, and it can hatch into a larva at any moment, killing her. No one can deal with this problem. Charles wanted to refute what she was saying, but Savina was right. It's highly likely that she'll helplessly die soon. When the egg hatches into a larva, it won't just tear her apart. The same will also happen to Annie, who was exposed to the eggs at the same time she was in the fight earlier. Savina thinks that the only humane way to go is to die before the disgusting hatching begins while they are still in one piece and lucid. But the mysterious magic swordsman might have a few words to say to the young lady. Now that Mudok has a rough idea of the overarching situation, he reached his hand out while it emanated the essence of frost. No one saw him move. They just heard his voice, and suddenly, Savina's dagger aimed at the child's neck was now in his hand. Mudok offered to treat her in exchange. Savina was scared, confused, and paralyzed. Mudok just instructed her to come and sit down for a minute as the treatment must be done soon. Edmund interjected, asking if Sir Magic Swordsman is also well versed in the art of healing magic. Mudok admitted that he's wholly unfamiliar with the concept of magic, as he only knows a few healing techniques passed down from where he was originally from. When Mudok told Edmund and Charles to calm down for now, they felt a huge weight lifted from their shoulders. The old man came up to him and started begging for the children to be saved. He doesn't have much to give as payment, but he would gladly repay the magic swordsman with all his heart. That just creeped Mudok out. He was already going to heal the kids without all the weird old man Edmund offered. He announced that he would begin the treatment, so everyone should step back a little bit. Edmund leads his people to follow the magic swordsman's instructions to back off while Mudok walks closer to his patients. He assured Savina and Annie that there was no need to be so tense as the treatment wouldn't take long to finish. All the girls have to do is close their eyes, relax, and believe in the expert's technique. Mudok started manipulating their internal energy, which seemed to have caused minimal discomfort. The bug's egg should be near their hearts, so the focus of this operation is quite sensitive. Using just his palm and his ability to sense inner energy, Mudok tried to locate the bug eggs diligently. Upon sensing some suspicious foreign material inside the girls' hearts, he stopped, and his eyes widened. He finally found it, the root cause of what made Savina